Hello and welcome to the program. I am DEJI360. Now, come May 29th, Nigeria will have a new president, Bola Ahmed Tinubu, who will steer the ship of state for the next 4 years after 8 years of the Muhammadu Buhari-led government. Some Nigerians see this transition as a symbol of hope for a better future, an audacious hope for that matter, in the Tinubu team to solve most of Nigeria's problems and put the country on the path of growth and prosperity. Others, though, cautious, want to see a new government with a change of direction. Yet, there are those who are pessimistic that anything will change. Now, from 1999 till date, Nigeria has had 6 presidential transition ceremonies, but 3 transitions from one president to another. That's Obasanjo to the Yaradua Jonathan government, and then you have the Jonathan to Buhari government, and now Buhari to the Tinubu government. Now, this current transition, however, will happen in a most challenging period in the country. Both Tinubu and Vice President-elect Kashim Shettima have been conferred with national honors of Grand Commander of the Federal Republic, that's GCFR, and Grand Commander of the Niger, GCON, on Thursday in preparation for the assumption of office. While delivering his speech at the ceremony, Tinubu vowed not to disappoint Nigerians, recognizing the trust and magnitude of expectation and responsibility bestowed on him as he receives investiture as an incoming president. Well, there's no question at all that the incoming government has its job cut out for it, because the country, of course, is dealing with some unprecedented challenges. Joining me now on the show to set the agenda for the incoming government is political affairs analyst Jide Johnson. Also joining us is Uche Igwe, who is a political affairs analyst and an economic expert as well. Gentlemen, thank you very much for coming on the program. Let me start with you, Dr. Igwe. If you were addressing the incoming government, what exactly would you be telling it?
Well, I think that the incoming government will have a lot of challenges, and indeed, because it's a government that is essentially expected to take over from the same political party, it will be safe to say that they're inheriting some of the teething problems that have been around for a while. Security will be on top of the agenda. Economy will be on top of also the agenda. And again, the fight against corruption. If you ask me, it would be safe to say there are unfinished businesses around these 3 key areas, and it would be fair for the incoming government to hit the ground running in these 3 areas. Security, both in the north and, I mean, all across the country, from banditry to terrorism to the menace of unknown gunmen. These issues are urgent, and Nigerians are full of expectation. Some of them are disenchanted, but again, there is a country to run. That's all I can say.
Yeah, of course. Most certainly, there's a country to run, and running the country, of course, would definitely not be a piece of cake. Let me come to you, Mr. Johnson. If you were talking to the government, what exactly would you say? That's the incoming government now.
She has outlined one of the 3 major areas in which this government needs to really address. What we need to add to that is the area of youth unemployment, dealing with the incidence of JAPA, what we call locally JAPA, which is brain drain, where young professionals across various disciplines are leaving this country in dreams of better opportunities, and we are losing our best brain to develop other economy. I think that's an area in which the government needs to look into in order to open up the economy, come up with a comprehensive economic policy that will open up the economy, that will allow foreign direct investment, that also will allow local investment, so that there will be better opportunities for Nigerian youths in various disciplines and in various professions, and so that we can stem the tide of this JAPA, what we call locally JAPA, but what in actual sense is brain drain, because when you lose the most viable part of segment of your population to other countries, they further help to develop other country. They contribute to the GDP of that country, whereas you are losing that. So that particular aspect should be a major concern for the administration coming in. And like my colleague said, there are three cardinal principles which we could base the promises that Buhari made when he was coming in 2015. And it was about dealing with corruption, dealing with insecurity. And if you look at dealing with corruption, insecurity, but if you look at it, we were dealing with Boko Haram, but there was no unknown gunmen. There was banditry was not of the highest order that we have now. Insurgency was nowhere to be found until this administration came to power. So if I were to advise the new president that will be inaugurated, that's President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, is going to have a comprehensive overhaul of the security architecture, a complete overhaul. There must be a departure. One, a complete overhaul of the security architecture of this country. Two, and then for him to have an inclusive security architecture, because a lot of people raised a lot of questions with respect to the inclusiveness, the narrowness of the security architecture.
And that's in the area of appointments, right?
Yeah. And if you look at it at a particular point in time, it was more or less like it was some certain section, a particular section in this country tied to a particular faith that heads almost all of our security apparatus. And you can't deal with a national problem without having an holistic and a national input.
Especially for a multi-ethnic society like Nigeria.
Yeah, exactly. So once it gets into power, I think it should just retire all the service chiefs and look for young minds across board and bring new ideas on board. You see, one of the things this outgoing administration did was to extend the tenure, keep extending the tenure of people heading security agencies and other agencies. That should not happen. You'll be destroying the morale of those that are coming behind, that they can never attain the top, and they won't put in their best because they believe that there are some sectatism of people manning some offices, which is critical to national security.
All right, Dr. Johnson, I'm going to come back to you. Let me come to you, Uche. For you, other than what he has identified needs to change, of course, there are quite a number of things that people think should change. There are certain things that the outgoing government has done, or the outgoing government did, that some people think need to change now. What are some of those things for you that also need to change, apart from, the way security, say, for instance, the way appointment now of the service chiefs have been handled and some other appointments?
Well, I think that flowing from the campaigns, there's a lot of inter and intra-ethnic division. I think that one important area the government could consider is to rebuild public trust. In my view, public trust on government is at its very, very lowest. Inter-ethnic trust has so diminished. So I think that if legitimacy will be built, especially in the court of public opinion, there is a need to ensure that trust is rebuilt and enhanced. And I think that what my colleague referred to, inclusiveness, could be part of it, but there are many other things. Even interreligious trust has diminished. As you know, the issue of the same-faith ticket was on the table. And I think that there needs to be efforts to reassure people from other faiths in the country that the incoming administration will be fair and it will be inclusive towards them. Another important area I think the incoming government could focus on is to diversify the economy. I mean, the whole idea of diversifying the economy beyond oil has been a rhetoric over the years. It is now becoming very, very urgent. As you can see that the outgoing administration was more or less in a borrowing spree. There's been a whole lot of ballooning of our public debt at the moment, and debt service to revenue ratio has been at is at a very high level. I mean, it's threatening at the moment the amount of resources that is spent on debt servicing. So I think that one way to stop this is to look internally and begin to maybe look at areas like the blue economy. The blue economy, I mean, incidentally, the president-elect Senator Bola Ahmed Tinubu is the former governor of Lagos State, and the blue economy is an area where Lagos has a comparative advantage. And there are other states in the country, and there are things to look into to sort of begin to put concrete efforts to diversify the economy.
Now, one of the problems that the incoming government will inherit, and one that it needs to deal with very quickly and head on, of course, will be the issue of subsidy. And it's a potential banana peel. How the incoming government now handles that, well, might determine to a large extent the kind of reception and how people will treat it in the next 4 years. And, you know, because you talked about looking internally now in terms of generating revenue, there's no question at all that subsidy somehow needs to go. But the question is, how will that be done? Thank God we just, the Dangote refinery has just been commissioned, and the expectation is that the first batch of oil now will hit the market from that refinery now sometime in August. But how do you think the incoming government should approach the issue of subsidy? Should it continue along the line that has been set by the outgoing government? Because, of course, as you know, from June, there's no budget. From June to the end of the year, there's no subsidy budget. So subsidy, subsidy is expected to go from June. Do you think this government, the incoming government now, should stick to that plan, or probably think of some other way of dealing with this problem?
I think the incoming government should allow this subsidy regime to go. The oil subsidy in Nigeria has been associated with a lot of sharp practices and a lot of corruption. Apart from that, with the coming on stream of the Dangote refinery, 650,000 barrels a day refining capacity, what that means is Nigeria will jump from a net importing country in terms of petroleum products to an exporting country. So with that level of capacity, we hear is going to produce like 72 million liters of gasoline, for instance, per day, which exceeds the consumption capacity of the country. So I don't think that the government should spend 1 second contemplating about fuel subsidy. It should be removed, and I think that will be an opportunity to sort of free a lot of resources that can be reinjected into the economy. So yes, unequivocally, fuel subsidy should go, and that is my position. And I think that with the Dangote refinery, there is no more thing to contemplate, because with the numbers we see, if it comes into reality, as we are very hopeful with the commissioning, then I think that there will be no need at all. There are a whole lot of other small refineries. They are already in operation across the country. So let the market dictate, and let consumers have option A, B, C, D from where they can get supply, and let the prices work. If I want to choose to buy from left or right, let me buy, and let the market dictate what the prices are. So yes, oil subsidy should be removed, and that should be the pathway.
Okay, and what's your take, Dr. Johnson? You look at the potential amounts that the country stands to save. Let's take, for instance, this year. The budget, the half-year budget for subsidy this year is over 3 trillion. And if you were to continue till the end of the year, you're looking at between 6 to 7 trillion, if not beyond that, depending on what the price of oil, the price of crude now is in the international oil market. So obviously, this is going to be a huge saving for the government. Should it decide to do away with the subsidy?
Until about 2 years ago, the government did not come out with the actual amount they were spending on subsidy. In actual sense, for many years under this present administration, we are paying subsidy without people knowing that we are paying subsidy, because there were no budgetary allocation until about 2 years ago, when government begins to make it public and open to people to know. As far as I'm concerned, the question we need to ask, who is subsidizing what? Because there's no transparency. When you look at that sector, there's no transparency. With respect to the amount of money we used to subsidize, We don't even have the record of how much crude oil we produce locally. We don't even have the records of the one we consume locally, the one we import back into the country.
So the
I
more
think
reason why subsidy should go then.
The more reason why government should be transparent in it, the more reason why the issue of privatization of NNPC should be thrown open. You know, this government came in and said, okay, we are going to privatize NNPC after much criticism of, because it was one of the campaign thrust of the PDP in 2019, and then this administration embraced it, and we saw the fanfare and that characterized the privatization. There are supra institutions that are bigger than the state in Nigeria that we need some measure of transparency. Now, one is NNPC, two is the central bank. These institutions, they act as if they are bigger than the nation. They act that are bigger than other institutions like the legislature and the judiciary. So, incoming administration, like my colleague said, needs to win public trust, and you can only win public trust if you are open and you are transparent. Because on the issue of subsidy, the more you look, the less you see. And you know, when he started his analysis, said there are sharp practices. We wonder what is really even going on in that particular sector with respect to who is paying subsidy and what we are paying.
That's the more reason why probably it should go, because I mean, if subsidy goes, then all this talk about sharp practices and all of that, we wouldn't have it.
If the subsidy are going into the hands of private pocket, we need to get to the root of it. We don't know where it's going. That's the bottom line. Now, if it goes now, you say on paper, okay, we have cancelled subsidy. Nigeria is no longer subsidizing petroleum product. That is what we were told for the first 5 years of this administration. And yet, the subsidies were being paid without budgetary allocation. They were impeachable offenses. Until people raise those concerning the matter, that's when it now enters into the appropriation. So we need to get to the root of the matter. What have we subsidized and how have we subsidized in the last 8 years? That's the bottom line. You see, they can play to the...
With your position, it will be very difficult to get rid of the subsidy.
because my belief is we are not paying any subsidy for DEJI. How much did you buy fuel 8 years ago? How much are you buying now?
I personally believe there's subsidy anyway.
Well, I don't share it from my own experiential point of view, because it is the price of diesel is not the same thing that it was 8 years ago. The price of kerosene is not what it is.
Well, those ones have been deregulated. It's just petrol that has not been deregulated.
Okay, and in what way has it affected the prices? They said it's going to bring down the prices. What has happened to the price of diesel? We know what happens to a lot of...
And that's one sticking point, Dr. Igwe. You look at it. For most people, removal of subsidy, if it doesn't translate to a reduction in the price of the product, then it's a problem. And then, whether we like it or not, fine, the Dangote refinery has come, but the truth is that, look, it's not as if it's going to make a significant differential now in price. Whether we like it or not, Dangote will still be buying crude at, I don't think he'll be buying crude at a discounted price at all. But of course, we know certain elements in the pricing now will be taking off when you talk about freight and all of that. But then it's not as if we're going to see any significant differential, so to speak. Say maybe a reduction in the price by half and all of that. Don't you think that might make it more difficult for people to accept this removal?
Well, I think that Dangote refinery is just one out of many refineries that are either being constructed or already on stream. But at least what there are two levels of inflation. There's the demand pull, there's a cost push. And at least right now, we're not going to say that there is no supply. And if you have a lot of persons supplying, at least there will not be an artificial inflation. There will not be hoarding. You know, I think my colleague talked about it. There are times in this country when, because of hoarding, because of scarcity, you cannot even find fuel to buy. I mean, gasoline. Now there will be gasoline, and there will be gasoline from several sources. Like I told you, Nigeria will become a net exporter I think that definitely it will impact on pricing. And, crude oil is an international product. So the price of the dollar to naira value and exchange rate issues will definitely affect what the prices are and will be. But at least there will be supply. I think that's one important factor. And not only from Dangote, because we talked about breaking the monopoly. So Dangote will be there. There will be so many others. Let the market dictate. That is what the regulation is all about. It does not mean that if you deregulate, you are going to get it cheaper. That is not guaranteed. But at least let the market dictate what the prices will be, and let consumers know that we are paying market price. Not when they say there is, there are subsidy and trillions are being paid on subsidy, yet we are buying market price. Let that money that is being paid for subsidy be plowed into the economy in another area. Let us know that we're not paying subsidy, and let us know that we are buying at market prices. Not when there is subsidy, we're still buying at market prices due to all kinds of explanation. And I cannot, emphasize this enough. There is corruption around subsidy, and that should be eliminated. That does not mean that automatically the corruption that is in the sector will disappear, but at least let that be the first step.
All right, I just want us to take a quick break and then we'll come back to continue this discussion. So don't go away, stay with us, and we'll be right back.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places, the Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, and use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.
All right, welcome back. Let's continue the discussion now on setting the agenda for the incoming government of Bola Ahmed Tinubu. And I still have on the program Jide Johnson, who is a political affairs analyst, and Uche Igbe, an economic expert. Gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. Let me quickly ask you this now, and I think I'll have to start with you, Jide. Tell me very quickly, where would you want the incoming government now to start from? What are those things you want the government to quickly move to address? Just to quickly move to address now before any other thing, because I know, of course, the government has a lot on its plate, but there must be some of those urgent issues now that it would need to attend to. What would those be for you?
Well, one is to run a government of national competence and not a government of national unity. And it's a government of national competence. We need to select the best brain across the length and breadth of this country, and people that have the capacity, both the capacity and the character and the competence across board to man the affairs of this country, to handle the ministries, department, and agencies of government. Because everything falls and rises on leadership. We need the right people in the right places. You could recall in the last 1 week, Minister of Education saying that they knew next to nothing about education when
yes,
Buhari
I like that, and I was really surprised.
So they knew next to nothing about education, yet it was the Ministry of Education for 8 years, and we don't want that, because you have to hit the ground running. While I also said government of national competence, that we don't want the situation whereby the opposition will be included in governance. There is the room for opposition in partisan democracy. It is important. The opposition must always provide an alternative viewpoint to what government is doing. They must always keep government at their toes. in order for us to have deliverables of democracy. But in a situation whereby both the opposition and the ruling party are in the same court, it is the people that suffer from it. So that's why I emphasize government of national unity. And like Uche said, we have identified three critical areas. He has identified three critical areas, and I think those areas need to be addressed. Other area you need to add to that is the health sector. You see, in the health sector, earlier today, in newspaper review, we heard that the nurses have gone on strike. It's because our political class, they patronize, they go on medical tourism. The president started with his ear and he ended up with his tooth in terms of going for medical treatment. And the president-elect has gone to France for medical. Ike Ekemadu was involved in a case because they didn't provide medical facility to do the kind of medical solution he wants to seek for his daughter abroad. If that had been locally, probably they might not have to kidnap somebody, or might not have to quote unquote kidnap somebody for them to use for that purpose. And we saw the ship whip that's made Oji lost his wife due to brief illness abroad. So that particular sector, there should be a critical investment. There are critical sectors that we must make investment in. The last one I'll talk about is education. You look at the Great Britain is coming up with a policy that in January, Nigerians that are traveling abroad will not be able to come with their family. And when those that are against the policy in the parliament came up with and said that these Nigerians contributed 45 billion. If you look, 45 billion that the British government made from educational tourism. I said, wow, just imagine that the money is invested in Nigerian economy. And I think that if government look at this critical area, they'll hit the ground running, and a lot of Nigerians will begin to build hope. And you could see that the team of the president-elect is renewed hope. It means that people have lost hope completely in the system. So for them to renew hope, they need to address these issues. Thank you.
Uche, what would be those urgent areas that you want the government to deal with? And of course, very quickly now, you would expect that the government would make appointments now, appoint ministers as quickly as possible and not delay like the outgoing government did in the first and even the second term as well. Of course, we know there's a law now that requires, that has a time frame within which ministers would be appointed. But then it wouldn't be a bad idea if the incoming president were to make, his appointments just weeks after taking office.
Well, I'll say two things. One is at the general level. Second, the second will be specifically in the sector. The general thing to note is that Nigerians have almost lost hope completely. Public trust has eroded to a phenomenal level. So I think that there is no action the incoming government will take unless that action or those actions are trusted by the people. Very little will happen. So I think that the government should do everything possible to rebuild trust. Trust in politicians, trust in politics, trust in government, trust, interreligious trust, interethnic trust. Those efforts must be made by what they say and what they do. And that's at the general level. The second level is security. Security, security, security. There needs to be a clear plan to battle insecurity from the north to the south. Unknown gunmen, terrorism, banditry, call it whatever name. I think that unless and until insecurity is battled exhaustively, there is very little confidence that even ourselves, citizens, can have in the country, what more investors. So I think that these two key areas, one general, one specific, is something that this government must do and do urgently. Of course, in terms of appointments, you have already said it, there is a law. And I think that for someone who has attempted, who has been, or who's quoted to have been thinking about presidency for a while, I think that he would have a team already. And it is important that this team is unveiled based on competence to sort of man specific issues very urgently.
Very urgently. Denman, thank you very much for coming on the program, and thank you for sharing your time with us. Dr. Jide Johnson, thank you very much for coming on the show, and Dr. Uche Igwe, thanks a lot for your time. Thank you. All right, we'll take a short break and we'll be right back. Don't go away. Continue to stay tuned.
Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal.
How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the president of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.